This week's Europe crisis seemed to reach a breaking point, engulfing Italy, the third largest member of the Eurozone and representing almost 20% of its GDP. What does this mean for Europe and the world? There are few people in the world with a better grasp of the ups and downs of all these issues than my next guest, Mohamed El-Erian, the CEO of Pimco, the bond trading giant. Mohamed, you've been warning about this for a while, the sense that Europe was adopting incremental measures that were not solving the problem. At this point, is it too big to solve? In the sense that Italy, because of its size, it's going to need something on the order of 500 billion euros of debt, new debt in the next 2 years. Can this even be solved?
So the good news is it's not too late to solve. The bad news is with Italy, the crisis has entered a very dangerous phase. And Europe cannot wait anymore. So Europe can no longer kick the can down the road, or I have a better image, which is they've been rolling a snowball down a hill. Because the snowball gets bigger, the problems have been getting bigger, and they've been getting more disorderly.
Let me ask you, the problem, the fundamental problem is Italy is going to need to issue all this new debt. The interest rate that the market is now charging Italy is much higher than it was charging it previously and threatens to be so large that the interest on the debt for Italy will become enormously burdensome. So the key here is creating some kind of sense of confidence that allows the market that makes the market charge Italy much, much less for its debt, correct?
Correct.
So what do you do to make that happen?
So first of all, to be clear, during the week we saw interest rate go above 7% for 10-year Italian bonds. At that level, a liquidity problem becomes a solvency problem. It's like a homeowner who sees the interest rate on the mortgage go up. They could have afforded the mortgage at a lower rate, but they cannot afford it at a higher rate. So it's very important to bring it down. What does it take to bring it down? First and foremost, it takes Italy to convince the market, like others, that they are serious about structural reforms that will allow them to grow. Farid, without growth, you can't lower your debt burden. The second issue that Europe needs to do is Europe needs to solve its banking problem. You know, the banks hold government debt, so their balance sheet got contaminated, and now the banks are a source of disruption. So you need to do something there. The third issue is Europe has to draw a line saying these are solvency cases that require debt reduction, and these are liquidity cases. So far, Europe hasn't been willing to do that until very recently with Greece. And until it does that, the market is not going to know where is that line, and therefore everything gets contaminated. And that leads to the fourth issue, which is the hardest issue. Germany needs to take a decision as to what it wants the Eurozone to look like. Germany is the most important country. People look to Germany for decisions. Germany needs to make one of two decisions if it wants to keep the zone together. Either a complete fiscal union with closer political integration. Another way of thinking about that is the decision West Germany did vis-à-vis East Germany 20 years ago, which is this is a political decision. We know there's a big bill. We're willing to pay it for the politics of it. The other alternative is to opt for a smaller, less imperfect union of countries with initial condition. Someone has to make that decision.
Can you, Mohamed, because one of the big issues here is it possible to get a smaller, more manageable union so that the euro is adopted by countries that have similar economies and have something in common? The problem with that I keep hearing is, how do you kick somebody out?
One of the tragedies of the Eurozone crisis is that we've waited so long that there is no costless solution. Every solution has enormous consequences, collateral damage, and unintended results. So the question is not, are there costs? It's rather which alternative has the fewest costs. But this is a political decision, because the other decision of maintaining the union is also very costly, right? And this is a political decision.
There's one very powerful actor here from whom we don't hear very much, and that's the European Central Bank. Couldn't the European Central Bank do a version of what the Federal Reserve did when we had our crisis and effectively say, we're guaranteeing everything? And what that will do is it will make the market stop trying to attack all these countries because they'll feel it's futile. Would that work?
The ECB, like the Fed, like the IMF, these are monetary institutions. They can build bridges, but they only build bridges. They need to be a bridge to somewhere. And so far, the ECB has been a bridge to nowhere, not because of their fault, but because the others haven't stepped up.
Others meaning?
meaning the individual countries that need to step up their reform effort, meaning Germany that needs to decide on how to strengthen the institutional underpinning, and private creditors who also have to contribute. They also have to carry part of the burden. This is not a burden that the ECB can or should lift on its own.
And the United States, all it can do, even though this potentially has a huge impact on us, Europe is our largest trading partner, our banks are connected, we can just watch from the sidelines.
So the U.S. has done two things. First, it has privately urged the Europeans to get their act together. And when that didn't work, it went public. It started to publicly lecture Europe, which didn't go down too well, because Europe said, hey, wait a minute, we're here because of what happened to you in 2008. I think the reality is that every country, the U.S. and others, have to hope for the best, but plan for the worst, which means have plan B ready to know that if, God forbid, something really terrible were to happen to Europe, how would we insulate other societies from this tsunami wave that would be coming over?
You have huge amounts of Italian debt on your books. What would you do?
What I tell people today is you want to be generally defensive and only selectively offensive. Generally defensive because it's not just about Europe, it's not just about the US. The globe is going through this whole realignment. I take you back on Wednesday last week when suddenly people saw the Italian yield go above 7%. 499 stocks in the S&P 500, so 500 companies, 499 were down. Now, there's no way that 499 companies share the same fate. But the reason why they're down is because investors are human beings. They said, just sell. And therefore, these very violent moves in markets also create opportunity. So it's about being generally defensive and selectively offensive.
Or as Warren Buffett said, be greedy when everyone else is scared and be scared when everyone else is greedy.
Correct, and have the stomach for it.
Mohamed El-Erian, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.